we heard from a couple of troopers, and then we've had a couple of investigators, and then we've had this expert on the stand, this DPS, this Texas Ranger, talking about this animation that he did, and of course the defense has poked all kinds of holes in it, as we saw in this testimony. And so when we come back, we're going to have more of this testimony. How much longer do you think this is going to go with this witness?
You know, there's no telling. It's very hard. I think Nico is really taking his time to just pinpoint the issues, maybe the inaccuracies, the missing pieces that are important to present. And he's doing it in such a way that he's just laying it out, you know, step by step by step. And the contrast that presents when you have the prosecution going first and the way they're kind of throwing everything out there. At times the testimony feels a bit muddied, the facts are just not very clear. You're jumping from A to Z and then filling in the gaps. Nico, you know, he's doing a good job at taking command of the witness and saying, hey, you know, I'm going to pause and talk about this really quickly. I'm going to get back to this in a second. Like, he's being able to guide the jury on what he's doing. I think he's doing a real effective job at that. So I don't know how much longer he'll keep it up, but he's doing a great effective job at very just concisely hitting the issues with this Texas Ranger.
Can the prosecution rehabilitate this witness?
At this point, I don't think so.
No way.
I mean, it's rough, and just going through the testimony from the Ranger, it's just, you can tell he's begrudgingly answering these questions, and at times trying not to answer these questions. And I feel like that's just hiding the ball, and the damage is done.
Yeah, and it's just like, you know, acknowledging, you know, when he's asked about Melody Flores and why is that not represented in this timeline, and that, you know, and Nico LaHood is saying, well, you know, you've got this unaccounted for time, you're making a big deal out of this unaccounted for time. Well, here's a possible explanation for some of that unaccounted for time, and him initially saying, well, he didn't want that information, and then later acknowledging that that would be important. That feels really problematic.
Right, when I couldn't believe that came out of his mouth. I mean, those were his words. He just said at first that he didn't have access to that information, and then ultimately ended up saying that he didn't want that information, that it wasn't critical, because Nico got him to testify that everything he put into this timeline was critical, important information. And so for this 2 to 7 minute time span of Adrian Gonzales talking with Ms. Flores, he's saying that's not critical, that's not important. But it is.
Well, yeah, because it speaks to what was Adrian Gonzales doing.
Right. And that's what this whole case should be, you know, centered around. I get there's a lot of testimony that's come in, a lot of different things that have been brought up, but that's really what we're here for.
You know, another thing I wrote down that where I felt like, you know, because I tend to, when I'm listening to testimony, I like to underline stuff that stands out to me. So they were bringing up this point about that the dispatcher doesn't give the officers that are responding all the information that has come in on this 911 call. And Nico LaHood asked the investigator, well, you know that could get people killed, right? And I wrote down, and he says it's possible depending on how much time passes. And I'm like, what? So you're going to hold Adrian Gonzales accountable for every second, but you just don't want to acknowledge that not dispatching out all the information is a problem? I mean, come on. Mm-hmm. It's like sometimes you're just better off to acknowledge, yeah, I mean, that was a problem. The dispatcher should have dispatched that information. Like, it's like trying to hide the ball and pretend that something, you know, isn't what it is. Of course, more information would have been helpful for those arriving officers. Mm-hmm. But how does that kind of thing, those you know, how does that kind of thing, how do you think that will play with the jury, those sorts of things? So,
you know, when you have a trial, and if I'm the prosecutor, those are bad facts for me, but they are facts. you have to address them. You have to work with those facts. You can't just, hey, I'm going to leave these facts out because they're harmful to my case. They're going to come out. The defense is going to bring them up. It's better if you can just hit them head on and address them, so that when it does come up on cross, you don't have that moment in front of the jury where it looks like you're hiding the ball, like you're hiding facts. And it didn't help at all when it came across that the state was cherry picking information for their investigation, to put together this animation and to put together all of that information. That also came across very poorly.
Which again, when they played it, I was...
there was shock value.
Yeah, I mean, I'm listening to it and I'm watching the squad cars drive up, and I'm hearing the gunfire, and I'm watching, Adrian Gonzales, at least in the animation, appear to be just standing beside his car, and I'm thinking to myself, why isn't he moving? Why isn't he doing something? Move. But then, of course, Nico LaHood reminds us about Melody Flores, and I went, oh yeah, that's right, Melody Flores, that's right. He gets out. He doesn't just stay by the car. He gets out of his car. He goes to her. He doesn't know who she is, right? He doesn't know that she's not the shooter. He doesn't know any of that. He drives up onto that campus. He gets out of his car. He goes to her, and of course she would be hysterical. I mean, just given her testimony, it's pretty clear that this critical incident played games with her own memory. She thinks that the squad car doesn't have decals. She thinks that the officer is wearing khakis and a white shirt. She thinks he's got a beard. He doesn't have a beard. She thinks the shooter is carrying a handgun. It's a long gun, like up and down the line. So,
and just given that, just shows because her her testimony now and how she is recalling everything, the stress impacts that ability to recall and how details change. So that just goes to show the amount of stress that she was under when she had the interaction with Adrian Gonzales. I'm sure she was hysterical. I mean, who wouldn't be in that situation? And Adrian is addressing her. He's dealing with her. And again, that's arriving on a scene where he has very limited information to begin with. So he's just being hit with all these unknowns when he's arriving at the scene.
Right, and then he's on the south side. The shooter is going to enter in that west side door, and there's no indication that he actually saw the shooter. Given what he dispatches out over the radio, saying he's supposedly wearing black, that kind of thing. You wouldn't say supposedly if you had seen him. You would, if you'd seen him, you'd be like, oh, he's wearing black, and all those things. And then I think back to Coronado's testimony yesterday, and you just wonder why they didn't take the shot.
Right. And that's just something, it didn't happen. We can't change that. And there's just so many things with this case where had anything just been different leading up to this, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Maybe it still would have. We don't know. And I think that's hard for people, for humans, for us to grapple with when you end up with a situation like this that was this tragic. We want to think this could have been prevented. We want to think if he had more information from dispatch, would that have changed things? If the door was locked, would that have changed things? All these little details that we know now, again, in hindsight, right?
Right.
So it's hard, I think, for humans us to grapple with that.
Well, and because of what happened here.
Right.
I mean, 19 kids died.